like we're live on YouTube. How's it going, everybody? So as I just mentioned to the people that are on Instagram, I'm going live on Instagram and YouTube at the exact same time because I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently. So I'm going to have camera here, questions here, questions here. Should keep me busy. What could go wrong, right? So how's it going, everybody in the chat room? How's it going? I see we got Tanner, got Marty, got Scott over here. We're going to have a competition to see whether YouTube or Instagram gets more viewers. That should be interesting. So what are you guys doing on a Friday night? Why are you hanging out with me instead of doing something more interesting than this? Hopefully you guys all have a drink in hand. I am currently drinking a Pelican Brewing Company. They're based out of Pacific City, Oregon. CN Red. CN Red. It's a good beer. It's kind of like an Irish red. It's probably my favorite beer. How's it going? We got Ryan, Helen, Sebastian, a whole bunch of people. Charles, Ryan again. Been drinking all day. I feel like, with everything that's been going on, we've all been drinking a little more than normal. I know I've been drinking at least one or two every single night, which is actually kind of rare for me. I honestly normally don't drink a ton. It's partially because I come from a long line of people that drink more than they should. So I've always had a guilty conscience for drinking very much. But lately I've been drinking every night. I've been looking forward to my evening beers a bit more than I used to. So how's it going over on Instagram? Those of you that are watching on YouTube, see my phone right here. I'm on Instagram live as well. Try to do double duty here. It's 2:30 a.m. here. That looks like a Scottish flag. Yeah, how's it going? Yeah, so as you guys have questions, I'm probably going to take them mostly from YouTube just because it's easier for me to read. But as you guys have questions, hit me with them because it'll help feed me with things to actually talk about rather than just sitting here talking about my alcoholism. So I should be proud, Nick. Left watching Art Wolf to watch me. Well, you went from one drinking photographer to watching another one. Well, at least Art does it every week. I don't do it every week. So there's that. I had a question come in before we got started asking if I had seen that Sony is talking about releasing a 12 to 24 f2.8 G Master. I have saw that, and it kind of got me thinking about, I've always chosen my wide angle lens based on what I could still use screw-on filters with. I've never liked having the big bulbous lens where you have to have like filter adapters in order to put a filter on. That's always been too much effort for me. But I also noticed that right now there's a Kickstarter campaign for a company that I think I've got the tab open. It's called Aurora Aperture, where they're making rear filters for every camera manufacturer. So Sony, Nikon, Canon, and it doesn't matter whether you have a bulbous front element or not. If you want to throw a filter back behind your lens, they're making it for every single kind. And that would be really appealing in some situations. I was thinking there's some situations where, the biggest downfall, the downside to having a filter behind the lens is the fact that you have to take your lens off in order to change filters or to put a new one on. And there's in dusty situations, or if you're shooting around water, that'd be kind of scary. But there's other situations where that'd be actually really nice. It'd cut down on the amount of lens flare, I think. And it would always be clean because it's back behind your lens. And you're packing tiny little filters rather than giant filter cases. So that would actually be pretty interesting to me. So the questions are piling up quickly. I'm already behind. Let's see. California workshop after everything opens up. I don't really have anything in California planned. I did those Death Valley workshops with Aaron Bobnick, and I did that a year and a half ago. And I really enjoyed teaching in that area, but at the same time, I don't want to do one on my own down there because I feel like I would be infringing on her territory, kind of like, I don't want to be, I want to support other people in the industry rather than compete with them. So I don't know what I would do if I did a California workshop. Have I tried macro now? And now that we're confined, yeah, I've done some macro. I struggle to be super motivated and inspired to shoot macro just because macro scenes don't always like wow me unless it's a really interesting subject. Bugs don't stay still, and I don't want to go out and kill bugs and staple and like photograph dead bugs. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I'm very seldom like super inspired by macro photography. Do I ever shoot in the Great Smoky Mountains? No, I've never actually been. So I would love to see a fall color in the Smoky Mountains area. That it looks so incredible. But I've never seen the East Coast really during fall color. What kind of beer do I have on tap? So I mentioned this before. This is a Pelican Brewing Company. Sea and Red. So it's their Irish red beer. I really like it. It's from the Oregon coast, and all the best beer comes from Oregon. Sorry about that, Instagram. I had a call that I had to ignore. Let's see. What else do we have here? What's up, big guy? Looks like we got Brian Pex. Wayne. Got Nathan in the house. Got Rakesh. Top bucket list item to shoot. There's a lot of places that I really want to get to. Norway is one, but I want to kind of avoid the really typical places that everybody goes. Everybody goes to the same places. They go to Lofoten and they shoot like 5 different scenes in the Lofoten archipelago area. I would like to see more of Norway. I want to see the big impressive fjords and all of that stuff. There's a lot that I want to see in the Norway area. I'd also like to see Greenland. Greenland, I'm supposed to be teaching a workshop at this summer. I'm still got my fingers crossed that I'm going to get to do that. I'm drawn to Arctic cold areas, and I think it's just because I'm a big guy and I melt in hot in hot climates. I tend to melt in the warmer climates. Let's see. There was another question about the next updates to my truck. I've been working on my pickup a lot during this whole COVID-19 thing, just because it's there and it's kind of like my hobby to keep me sane right now. It's my project. So I've added a set of drawers to it. I've added a roof rack to it. What else? I put on a rear bumper. Big steel rear bumper. Next upgrades, I have not a lift kit, but just a leveling kit for the front end that I want to put on it. And then at some point, once I'm sure that the economy is going to be okay and I'm not going to be poor, super poor, and once taxes are paid, I want to get a new front bumper for it and a winch. But the truck has kind of been my hobby lately. What's up from LA? How's it going? Yeah, Oli from Norway is a cool dude. Let's see. There's a night photo from Steptoe Butte on this month's PSA showcase. That's interesting because you're not supposed to be at Steptoe Butte at night, or maybe it's of Steptoe Butte. That'd be interesting. Oh, it's always nice when people decide to blow up your phone during a live feed. Let's see. What other questions? Why am I so attracted to Mesa Arch? Mesa Arch is just the gift that keeps on giving, right? So anybody that follows me on Instagram knows that I tag all of my locations as Mesa Arch. So, I post a random photo of a waterfall in Iceland and I tag it as Mesa Arch. And it's not because I want people to actually believe that that's from Mesa Arch. It's because it's my little way of protesting geotagging on social media. the reason I am doing that, the reason that I'm protesting geotagging on social media is because I've been directly responsible and I've seen the negative impact that sharing a location, especially of more fragile areas that can't take very much traffic. I've seen what happens when I'm like, here I am at such and such waterfall. And then, 2 years later, not only is the waterfall seeing way more traffic than it used to see, but a lot of times it's getting trashed in the meantime. And once it gets trashed, then fences go up and the place is really never the same. Right now, we're seeing such a massive, steep incline of popularity of going outdoors and going to scenic places. It's way cooler than it used to be. Because of that, there's just way more people visiting places like that. And most of them are treating the place with respect, but a lot of them are not. And when you have a large following on Instagram, or anywhere, like I'm lucky enough to have, you can have a really big negative impact on a place. And I've learned that the hard way. A lot of my favorite places from my earliest YouTube videos and on Instagram, when I would share those locations, I was directly responsible for a massive spike in the number of photographers and just tourists in general that went to these places. And a lot of those places have seen a lot of damage because of me. So this is my way of not only starting the conversation, because everybody that doesn't get it asks me like, why do you tag that Mesa Arch? That's obviously not Mesa Arch. Mesa Arch is a perfect example of how a place ends up when it becomes really popular. If you've ever been to Mesa Arch for sunrise, you know that it's miserable. You have like 100 people all squeezed next to each other, tripods overlapping each other, photographers getting grumpy just for that one shot. You're on this massive canyon wall, but everybody's going to that one spot to get that one shot because they saw it on social media. So that's why I tag everything as Mesa Arch on social media. Yeah. So what else we got? Ever thought of shooting in Mongolia or Russia? Yeah, Mongolia for sure. Although so I have this thing. I want to shoot a lot of the same locations that a lot of people want to shoot, but once a place gets popular, it makes me not want to shoot it anymore. It makes, because I have this thing where I would much rather go shoot somewhere that it's not like the in place to shoot. And as soon as it becomes super popular, and the rebellious part of me makes me not want to do it anymore. So because there's starting to be more and more photo workshops going to places like Mongolia, it makes me not want to go there, or at least wait until it's not popular to go anymore, then go. So, but Mongolia for the history, for sure. That's more of a cultural thing. I'm just really interested in the, the nomadic peoples of the steppe area is really cool. Russia has just so much to offer. Russia is so big. I'd love to see some of the Siberian wilderness. There's just so much to see. But Siberia is far less popular to go to, especially as an American, because there's that tension thing going. So places like Russia, and actually there's places in, in the Pakistan area and Saudi Arabia areas that are actually incredibly beautiful. There's a lot of really great photographers from the Middle East that I follow, and their work is inspiring, and the landscapes they're photographing there are just incredible, but it's places that you very seldom see because, there's that cultural tension. But I'd love to go and explore those areas. Do a video on accessories that most photographers don't need. There's so many of them too. Anytime you've been searching on Amazon for any length of time, they try to just flood you with all this junk. You see those big accessory kits with 50 filters that you don't need. Here's a blue filter, and here's a magenta filter, and here's a half grad circular filter that can't possibly work very well. Yeah. Let's see. What other questions you guys got? Also, if you maybe put your questions in bold so I can keep the general conversation separate from questions. It'll make it easier to find them. Tanner says, where do I move the histogram when the scene is just clumped in the middle? No exciting light happening. That's an awesome question. So he's talking about a very flat, low contrast scene. So if you're photographing a scene, let's say that you're eliminating the sky from this big overlook or vista where it's a very low dynamic range scene and it's very easy to get all your data like well within the edges of your histogram. In those situations, because one of the first things you're going to do in post-processing is stretch that histogram out by adding contrast. When you add contrast, you're stretching the highlights one way and the blacks the other way. What ends up happening if you underexpose that is as you stretch it out, all of the data starts to have gaps in it if you expose it too dark. So what you always need to do in a really flat situation like that is expose it to the right, meaning expose it as bright as you can before blowing out any highlights. The reason you want to do that is because the way camera sensors work is they record way more information on which way is the right for you guys? The right? Over here? They record way more information on the bright side of the histogram than they do the dark side. So it's exponentially more information. They record millions of tones on one end and hundreds on the other. So if you have a flat scene, always exposed to the right. That way you're recording as much color and tone fidelity as you can. That way when you add contrast and you stretch that histogram out, you're not going to end up with any kind of weird banding or artifacts as a result of all that contrast. It's one of those things that you learn the hard way, because when you're photographing a flat scene like that, what looks good on the back of the camera is typically a fairly dark exposure with most of your information in your midtones or even dark midtones. But what's actually best as far as data goes is you want to record that really bright where it doesn't look good on the back of your screen, but you're recording all of that information on the right side of your histogram. That made me sound real smart, but I'm not. Okay, considering getting a full frame camera, how much will the quality of the lenses or images improve? Also, what percent would you say it increases your images using one? Okay, so totally depends on type of photography you do. If you do a type of photography where you're pushing your ISOs, your ISO setting quite a bit, shooting at higher ISOs fairly often, full frame cameras just can't be beat as far as their high ISO performance, especially if it's a full frame camera that also has kind of a small megapixel count. Like my Sony a7R IV doesn't do nearly as well at those higher ISOs as my A9, because my A9 only has 24 megapixels and my Sony a7R IV has 62 now. So because of that, those smaller, those full frame cameras that have less megapixels, they do awesome at high ISOs. The other place that a full frame camera is going to give you a huge benefit is when you go to print. Just the overall resolution, you have generally more megapixels to play with. So my a7R IV will produce a much better print than my A9 if we're talking about large print sizes. Having said that, if you do a type of photography where you're not pushing your ISOs very much and you're not printing at all, you don't really get a massive benefit from having a full frame camera, unless maybe you're shooting portraits, right? And you need a shallow depth of field. A full frame camera makes those shallow depths of field images much easier to get. So if you're a portrait photographer or a wedding photographer or an astrophotographer or a sports photographer, there's a big benefit to a full frame camera. Or if you're a landscape photographer that prints a lot, there's a big benefit. But if you are somebody that is getting your feet wet, is sharing your images mostly on social media, and you're not selling prints and you're not pushing your ISOs very high, crop sensor is totally enough, I think, in my opinion. God, I can be long-winded sometimes. That's the problem with these things is like I will answer a question and then towards the end of the answer, I'm just like, Nick, just shut up. That took way too long to say. Let's see. We've got Nathaniel Miller. How's it going, man? Am I ever thinking about coming back to Banff National Park for another trip? Yes. I've still never seen the area in the summertime. I'd love to see the area when you can actually see the water in the lakes. That whole area. I've never been up to Jasper. I want to explore that place a lot more. Although in the summertime you guys have all them bears. So there's that. Like, I'm not a huge fan of grizzly bear, but, you know, sure we can come to an understanding. BLM land has some great places. Yes, BLM land is awesome and is also some of the best camping you can get because it's more like off the beaten path. It's not like the super over-visited state park or national park campground. I love camping on BLM land. Let's take a couple questions off of Instagram. Let's see. Banff and Jasper have beautiful areas. Yep. When am I coming to the east over by Quebec? Yeah, I've never been to Eastern Canada at all. I would love to see it. I've also really interested in like Newfoundland and Labrador and some of those areas over there on the east, like northeast, getting out up into the remote areas of northeast Canada. Interested in that as well. There's some really rugged land out that way. Really enjoyed my training programs. I've been a great inspiration. Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. I always feel like I'm rambling, especially in my tutorials, because it's hard to know when you're on this side of the camera what is actually interesting and applicable to you guys on that side of the camera. I always feel like I'm just talking at a screen rather than actually talking to people. Okay, we got another question. Hey, Nick, in your opinion, what's the most important rule of composition in regards to landscape photography? Most important rule probably is, let me take a drink of my beer. To fill the frame with the interest, or to have less of the mess. Less of the mess is a term that I came across when photographing forest scenes. And I think that is a great way of explaining how, it's not just about filling the frame with the interest, because sometimes you can simplify too far, right? Good landscape photos oftentimes are telling more than just a super simple story. I like images, people like Mark Adamus. He's a great example of somebody that tells a more complex story, but he does it with showing less of the mess. He can have a lot going on in an image, but it's not messy. It's not cluttery. And I think that there's a lot of, if I was to just spout out my favorite rule for composition, is to try to include less of the mess, but more of what it is that you want the story to be about. If you're going to go home and tell a story about standing in this particular place, looking at this particular scene, what things would make it into that story and what things would you leave out? And I think that that's the best way of, simplifying all of the different rules of composition that are not actually rules. They're just a bunch of rules of thumb that people throw out there to help people get started. Because once you move past those basic rules, you don't think about that crap anymore. I never think about the rule of thirds or anything like that. A lot of times when I have a big, beautiful sky, I prefer the rule of fourths. I like to have, 3/4 of my frame be that big, beautiful sky and only 1/4 of it be the land. And, there's no such thing as a rule. There's only guidelines and helpful tips, that kind of stuff. Ever thought of heading east to Acadia? Yeah, I was lucky enough to be at the Out of Acadia conference a while ago. And what was that, 3 years ago? It was the first time that I hung out with Thomas Heaton. And beautiful place. It was definitely a different kind of landscape than I'm used to. I'm used to drama. I'm used to the Pacific Northwest where things kind of hit you in the face. But, the Maine coast is a little bit more subtle. And a big for that reason, I struggled actually to get good photos there. I found it to be way more sky dependent than a lot of what I'm used to, but very beautiful, barely missed fall color there, but I would love to see that someday. And I'd also love to be in that neck of the woods during, you know, when stuff is freezing and you got like frozen seascapes. I love that stuff. Let's see, let's catch up. Would I do a video on shooting cityscapes for a day, but with the same principles as landscape photography? Maybe. I don't know that. So here's my thing. I try to do what is interesting and inspiring to me. Sometimes I struggle with coming up with video ideas because basically I'm feeling blah and uninspired, you know? And a lot of times I feel like I've already said everything that I can think to say. So it makes it very difficult for me to come out with new content sometimes just because I get really hard on myself. I feel like a broken record. Cityscapes don't really inspire or motivate me because I spend most of my life trying to get out of cities, not going to them. And so, you know, while a lot of the same landscape photography techniques apply, especially post-processing techniques, dual processing, a single raw file and exposure blending, all that stuff works great in cityscapes. Photographing cityscapes, it's not something that's inspiring to me just because I don't like cities. I try to get away from them as much as I can. Totally understand people don't respect the areas at Machu Picchu. Pretty much any popular place, if you go there and you spend enough time there, you're going to see just a total lack of respect. You know, it's a small percentage of the people. You know, you can have 95% of everybody respect the location, but it only takes 5% to trash it, especially if you have 100,000 people going to a place. That's 5,000 people disrespecting that particular place. So it doesn't take much. And that's why, for those of you that are familiar with the leave no trace principles, it's basically a set of principles for people going out in the wild to follow so they leave no trace. Well, one of those has now been adopted, that you will not share locations on social media. And as somebody like myself that has a YouTube channel and, you know, sometimes a video will get 10,000 views, sometimes it'll get 200,000 views, I can make a pretty massive negative impact if I'm giving away every photo location. So for that reason, in YouTube videos and on Instagram, when I share my stuff, I typically just don't share locations because I'm afraid of having that negative impact. It's also kind of a loaded subject because there's a lot of other YouTubers that, and these are people that I'm friends with, they make a big part of their name by sharing those locations. Because I think a lot of people, the reason that they share a specific location like that is because it gives them a little bit of an algorithm boost, or they'll show up in more searches. It's just a way of getting a little bit more exposure. The change that I've made with my own ethics is that I don't want to put my exposure, I don't want to make the exposure I get more important than the well-being of the location. So I've been trying to ride this fine line between still sharing locations from being, sharing videos from being out there and sharing images from being at these locations, but just not mentioning it and trying to not have as much of a negative impact. It's a fine line to ride because people will argue like, well, you shouldn't, share an image from there at all. They're not wrong, but I'm a photographer, and part of the reason that I like to share images is so people can see them. It's like writing a song but never playing it for anybody. Like, that's not how it works to be a musician. That's not how it works to be a photographer. Man, anyway, next question or next comment. I think the F4 team needs a trip to Australia. Yeah, Australia, I want to just be in the Southern Hemisphere in general. I would love to see the Milky Way from the Southern Hemisphere. That's a bucket list thing for me. Whether that's in New Zealand, New Zealand's calling to me, just not the flight down there. What else do we got? Do we have any recommendations for Washington and Oregon this summer for if the national parks are closed? So Ryan, I would say just check out some BLM land. Me personally, I'm getting more and more satisfaction from going to kind of random places and trying to make images there. And I know it's not the big impactful Multnomah Falls or something, but it's still, you're spending time outside. And if you do get an image, it's going to be a far more original one. And it's going to be one that like, people are going to be like, whoa, where's that? I've never seen that before. So I've been enjoying that. Do I ever think I'll shoot Australia? Yes, I definitely think at some point I'll get down there. I just don't know when. Let's see. BLM land question. Where do I move the histogram when the scene is clumped in the middle? Oh, that's old. I need to scroll. Holy cow, I'm way behind. That moment when you realize that, oh crap, there's like 100 comments that you haven't seen yet. Where am I? Am I drumming at all during the quarantine? I thought about setting up my drums right back there, but I haven't yet. It's because I don't see the point. You know, if I had a potential band or something, I would shake off the rust. But all I'm really going to do is sit in here and drum, make the neighbor mad, and not really come away with anything from it. I'm the type of person that needs a purpose, you know, and I need a purpose in the things that I do. And so, you know, playing music, I need something to work towards, and I don't want to be just a lame guy playing drums by himself, I guess. Let's see. Do I use focus stacking? Asks Mark. Yes, I use focus stacking a ton. It's one of those things that I do oftentimes, even if I'm not sure that I'll need it. It's nice to go ahead and take those frames just in case you need it. So a lot of times, let's say I'm photographing a scene and it's kind of borderline. I don't know if I need a focus stack. I'm not sure if I need to exposure blend. I'll go ahead and I'll take those images and I'll just decide later. So I'll hold my composition. I'll do my focus stack. I'll bracket. I'll make sure that I have all the possible ingredients to put those images together just in case I need them. Oftentimes I only need the one frame where I exposed for my highlights, but it's much better to have those images and not need them than to need them and not have them. Let's see. When will we be able to travel overseas? And when am I coming to Australia? I'm sensing a theme. Just had to reschedule my Iceland workshop, and that was for July. And my June workshop had to cancel that. But the reason I bring up my Iceland workshop is the fact that Iceland is going to be opening their borders, I think tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? I think it's either tomorrow or next 16th. Anyways, it's coming up soon. They're opening their borders. One of the things that you'll have to do, though, is you'll get to the airport where they're at, and you'll have to take a flu test to prove that you are COVID free, or you can voluntarily put yourself into quarantine for 2 weeks, which is going to be a really expensive thing to do if you're on a vacation, or you can show up with a doctor's note saying that, hey, I just took a test before I flew here and I don't have the COVID. So I think that's probably going to be a thing moving forward. I think a lot of places are very much eager to get tourism going again because, you know, think about a country like Iceland. They make a huge percentage of their economy. Their economy is based around tourism. And so there's a lot of pressure on them to open stuff up. I think that's probably going to be the way things start opening up. I would like to think that people are going to be traveling again by October, but, you know, there's going to be a lot of fear based around it too, because, you know, one of the last places that I really want to be right now is in an airport, you know, sitting in line in an airport or sitting next to two other people in a small congested airplane. None of that sounds like a good time to me right now. Come down to Tasmania. Yes, I definitely want to go to Tasmania. Let's see. Falling behind, bold in your last weather video. What was the strength? What was the magnetic filter I had on my Lightning? So I have these sitting here because I got so many questions on them. So these, see that? These are the case magnetic filters. And what's cool about these, so to answer the question quickly, I was using a 3-stop ND filter because I was photographing Lightning, and what I really needed was to just try to lengthen my shutter speed enough to increase the odds of getting a lightning strike. So I was shooting most of those at like 0.8 seconds, and the interval on my intervalometer was 1 second. So that's only, 20% of a second that I was missing in between each frame, which increased the odds of getting a strike. So that's typically what I try to do. I don't want to go any stronger with my ND filter than a 3-stop. Otherwise, the lightning is just so faint, it's like really lame. So ideally, you get it with no ND filter, so you have a very strong lightning bolt. But a 3-stop, you still get an acceptable one. So the reason I wanted to show you guys these filters, first of all, they're very, very thin and minimal. And what's so cool about them, I got a lens with the thing on. You screw one side on your lens, and this piece is really thin. So you can just leave them on and you don't even realize that you have them on. And then when you go to use them, you just pop them on. And their magnets are pretty strong. They could be a tiny bit stronger, maybe, but they're thin enough that you don't run into too much vignetting or anything like that. You can, let me grab another one here. You can stack them, which other magnetic systems that I've seen, you couldn't stack. They don't seem to get stuck. And I don't think I have it in here, but they have a little magnetic cap too. So you can just grab a magnetic cap and plop it on there, and that's pretty cool. So these are made by Case. That's Case with a K. This is the M10 series. So far, I'm liking them. I'm testing them out. They sent these to me. I'll be giving these away whenever I release the review. I just want more of a chance to use them. I run into a tiny bit of vignetting on my 16-35 G Master, just a tiny bit. And in fact, I might have been stacking when I ran into that, so I can't say for sure, but I feel like I ran into some vignetting with that, but it's pretty handy. And like I can have all the filters I need in a small little case like this. Comes with a little leather case, which is also magnetic, which is pretty cool. So I'm liking those for the most part. Let's see. Falling behind in questions here. Let's catch up. Have I seen the work of Richard Tati? He's an Australian photographer who does Milky Way night shots. I have not, but I can definitely check him out. It looks like he's got a YouTube channel. I will check him out. Other people should as well. I hope people are traveling in October. Looking forward to the Oregon Coast workshop, says Mike. Yes, man, it's tough. It's a bad time to be in the workshop business. I'll tell you that. Pretty much everything that I've had this year has gotten rescheduled, except for the online conference that I taught at with the Out of Chicago Live thing. So, which means I'm pretty much just living on next year's money. So that's a good time. Pelican Brewing Company. That's right. Pelican Brewing Company, which is getting warm because I'm talking more than drinking. Is it over? Did I miss it? No, Barbara. It is still going. I'm still talking. Let's see. Smoky Mountains. Hey, Nick, I'm a Japanese photographer. I have a question. What is the aperture I use or don't want to use when shooting with pan focus? Pan focus. What do you mean by pan focus? You might have to explain yourself there. But so choosing settings in general, if depth of field is a non-issue, meaning everything's far away, I try to use f8 or f11, somewhere in there. The more depth of field becomes an issue, the more I start to stop down. So the farthest I pretty much ever stop down, generally speaking, is f16. F16 is typically my go-to setting when I still need a lot of depth of field, but I think I can get it in one shot. If I start feeling like I'm going to have to focus stack this anyways, I will go back to F11, and then I'll just make sure to do plenty of frames to get everything sharp. There's a lot of times where I'm trying to get a shallow depth of field. Maybe I'm trying to throw the foreground out of focus and have the background in focus. Vice versa. Maybe I'm focusing on a tree. In those cases, I open it all the way up to like f2.8, f4, whatever I can do. And then I purposely throw stuff out of focus. Let's see. Do I ever feel the need to shoot wider than 16? Yeah. There's a lot of times where I have like this really cool foreground and it's all about the foreground. Seascapes in general, that's probably why I shoot so many wide compositions, is because I photograph a lot of seascapes. And as you know, a wide angle lens really amplifies a foreground, right? Well, if your foreground is all about the moving water and the lines being created from that water, a super wide 12 millimeters is going to exaggerate it even more. And you get more sky in the frame. So there's a lot of times that I wish that I had wider than 16. A lot of those times I can just do a quick vertical panorama or something like that. It's probably why I shoot so many vertical compositions, is just to try to include more of the foreground, more of the sky. Do I edit my photos on the same screen brightness that I use for screen calibration? So yeah, so the way I treat screen brightness is, first of all, I don't do it with this blinding light in my eyes. That's one of the hardest things about recording tutorials, is I'm having to stare into a light and then try to edit. It's tough. But with screen brightness, I try to have the same lighting set up all the time. I have like blinds on all my windows, whether it's day or night. And that way my room is the same brightness all the time. So my screen brightness can stay the same. And then most things I'm processing or I'm editing for the web. If I am going to send something to print, then I have a particular luminance value that I turn my monitor down to, and then I check my image, check the histogram, and I kind of reprocess it a little bit on that lower screen brightness before I send anything to print. But for the most part, I check everything on my phone before it goes onto the internet, because most people are going to be viewing my work on their phone anyways. And my phone is kind of the screen that I'm the most used to. So it makes sense that you want to check your work, check what stuff looks like on your screen that you're the most used to anyway. So I have an iPhone, whatever it is, 11, the newer one. And I'm really used to that screen. I trust the color on it. And so I always check my image before it goes online anywhere on my phone to make sure that it looks the way I think it looks. Because a lot of times our screens, when we calibrate them, they're a little lower contrast, or maybe they're a little less saturated than a phone. So it's good to just kind of see what stuff looks like on a phone before it ever goes into the wild. Let's see. Is there any reason I don't shoot images in black and white? I do sometimes. I don't do it very often. I'm not sure why. But when I have an image that calls to me, like looks like a good black and white image, I don't hesitate to go black and white with it. Some of my favorite images are actually black and white that I've done, but they're just kind of rare for me because I guess I like color. I don't know. I try not to overthink it. Do I use focal length stacking, focal length blending? Yeah, sometimes. I do it subtly. So focal length blending is when you have most often you have a wide angle foreground. Let's say we have a foreground that's taken at 16 millimeters, but you have a mountain in the background that gets incredibly small when you take that 16 millimeter photo. So what you do is take a 16 millimeter foreground and then you zoom into like 24 or 35 millimeters for that mountain, make it larger and more impactful again. And then in Photoshop, you blend it, the horizon or whatever, you blend in that larger mountain. I do that within reason, but I'm always striving to make it more how it seemed at the time rather than just making a badass photo. So I've kind of drawn a line in the sand for myself where just because I can do something in Photoshop doesn't mean I will. Just because I like the chase of a photo. I like trying to find a good location and make a lineup with the right conditions. And if I just go into straight up fantasy land, it takes away some of that chase for me. I always want to I want to leave that for myself, because for me, that's part of the fun, is trying to find that perfect location rather than just create it digitally, and try to be there at the right location rather than just fake the sky digitally. So just because I always limit myself. Like, if I can't do it between 16 and 35 millimeters, I don't need to do it. So yeah, I do it sometimes. Saw that focal length video. What do I think separates a good photo processing or composition from a good one? For example, a great versus good Milky Way photo. Let me take a drink. These more wide open questions are always more difficult. So typically what separates a good from a great photo, I would say 50% of it, and as much as people don't want to hear this, it really is the processing. I mean, somebody like a Michael Shainblum or a Ryan Dyer, I always use those as examples. They can stand right next to one of their workshop participants, take the exact same composition, share it online, and one just blows away the other. And a large part of it is just post-processing. Post-processing, to me, is 50% of the creative process. You know, it's where a photo really can come to life. But a lot of times it's also those fine little details. I find that, you know, people that are used to looking at photography every day, and I'm not saying, I don't want to use the term a professional photographer, because, you know, there's a lot of really amazing amateur photographers as well, but a photographer that lives and breathes it and does it every day, they tend to pick up on the small little details more easily than somebody that, you know, just doesn't. Like, maybe they haven't picked up their camera in a couple weeks, and then they go out and do it, and they take a very good composition, but a lot of times there's just like those little tweaks that they didn't quite notice. Like, well, your horizon's just tiny bit crooked. Okay, fix that. Oh, also you got this limb just kind of intruding on the frame. Oh yeah, okay. I mean, it's a lot of little small things, but if you have enough little small things add up, it's a pretty big difference. So I would say post-processing and attention to detail. Those are often the two main things that separate a good photo from a great photo, I think. Do I ever shoot on film? No. I have film cameras. Don't know how to use them. I collect them, but I don't know how to use them. I've jokingly, well, not jokingly, but I've reached out to Ben Horn, and I told him we need to do a collaboration video where I go out and hang out with you and I attempt to shoot film for the first time, because the only experience with shooting film that I have are with those little Walgreens disposable cameras. I don't even know how to load film. And it's funny that here I am, a professional photographer, super fancy, and I don't even know how to load film. It's a sign of the times, but I'm very interested in learning. Let's see here. John says, couldn't agree more about the post. I'm a one-time painter and enjoy editing, and I'm kind of anal. See, I think attention to detail, let's call it that. Attention to detail, it can't be overstated. It's a big thing. Let's see. I need some pretzels. You are correct. I do need some pretzels to go with this beer. Do I ever do wildlife photography? And if so, what's my favorite animal to shoot? I don't do a lot of wildlife, but I do opportunistic wildlife. So, you know, when I drive to a photo location, I'm always driving with, you know, a camera with my 100 to 400 on the passenger seat, set to a fast shutter speed and high speed. You know, I have it in like, oh crap, there's some wildlife mode. So that's the kind of wildlife I mostly shoot. Although I do like photographing birds of prey. You know, there's something about trying to catch, you know, an eagle fishing and that kind of thing. That's really, first of all, it's really humbling because it's challenging. Good wildlife photographers I have immense amounts of respect for. I have immense amounts of respect for wildlife photographers just because you have to be very skillful to get the shot. You not only have to have good gear, but you have to know how to use that good gear. So yeah, I enjoy birds in flight. Let's see. Hello from Indonesia. You should visit the eastern part of Indonesia sometime. Daniel Cardan has been here. You should come check out his pictures from here. Yeah, I've actually seen some of Daniel's. So Daniel Cardan, if you're not familiar with him, he's an amazing Russian photographer. And I've seen his work from there, and it's pretty incredible. We got Brian McGuckin in the house. How's it going, Brian McGuckin? If those of you guys that don't know Brian, he used to, I don't know if you still are doing the Thoughts on Photography podcast. Who's my favorite photographer to room with while traveling in China or to shoot an NFL game with? And when are you going to make it happen again? So Brian McGuckin is a friend that I've been lucky enough to shoot NFL photography with. We both shot, I guess the only game we shot together with was the Bears at Lions in Detroit. And that was a few years ago now. It would be interesting to know whether the NFL season is going to be as it was. I'm hopeful that I'll get to shoot some NFL this year. Hopefully, Brian, you can be there as well. How long have I grown my beard and will I ever cut it off? Well, first of all, the answer is no. I will never cut it off. Never. Although it's starting to go pretty gray. That was never part of the plan. Like I don't want to be Gandalf. So I suspect that as I get older, it'll probably get shorter. Just because I don't want to be Gandalf the gray, Gandalf the white. I wanted to be like Dimebag Darrell more than ZZ Top. Right? Yeah. What is my hat brand? You know, that's a good question. I just got this off of Amazon. I do like it. It's got the mountains and stuff, and it doesn't have a whole bunch of words on it. I don't remember who made it, though. I just did a search on Amazon for it. I complete you, Brian McGuckin. Of course I do. Speaking of eagles, my profile picture is the image of an eagle I took. Oh, right on. Let's see. I should collab with Steve Mathis from Grand Teton National Park. I actually don't know Steve. I'll have to check him out. Have I heard that DJI has lost patent case in the United States will make them stop selling their drones in the U.S.? No, I have not heard that. That's a pretty massive chunk of news. I'll have to look that up. Do I think I'll ever invest in a small travel trailer? If I did it, I would be more likely to get like a bed camper, you know, a off-road, what's it called? Four-wheel camper. They're basically a pop-top camper. I'd be more likely to get that for the pickup just because I don't really love pulling things. Although having said that, I've been looking at like little off-road trailers to put my roof tent on top of, and then you can have like little storage because there's something nice about, you know, if I'm camping somewhere, being able to disconnect from my setup and set up my tent, go shoot sunset, come back and have all my stuff set up. And then in the morning, already be disconnected and just cruise off, shoot sunrise, come back, and camp is still there rather than having to tear down camp right before I go to shoot sunrise because it sucks. There's no getting around it. It sucks. Just dye my beard. Yeah, I thought about doing the Just for Men thing, but the problem is like once I stop doing it, like if I start doing that, I have to just keep doing that for the rest of my life. Otherwise, I'll stop dyeing my beard and then I'll just go gray all at once and it'll be a shock to everybody's system. Can't have that. Lightroom mobile tutorial. I probably won't do one just because I don't use it. I don't know what I would ever use Lightroom mobile for. You know, I do a fair bit of photos with my phone, but they're all just like composition scouting. I don't do anything with my phone or edit with my phone, anything I'm serious about. If I'm serious about a photo, it gets edited in Photoshop. Let's see. Where in the world has been your favorite location to shoot and why? I loved Faroe Islands. I love Iceland. And I love Kauai. You know, those three places are, you know, there's just so much to shoot there. You never feel like you get skunked there ever. I feel like the light's always good in Hawaii just because it's always partly cloudy with a chance of rain. Iceland, you know, if the skies aren't working out, you go photograph a waterfall or go photograph aurora. Like there's just so many different options in Iceland. But because I'm a seascape photographer, primarily, like I'm starting to identify more with just photographing seascapes. It's my happy place. It's what I enjoy doing the most, probably. I think Oregon coast. Oregon coast is just the place that I could go to the coast, stay there for 3 weeks straight, shooting every day, shooting a different place every day, and I'll get something different every single day, just because moving water, moving atmosphere, moving clouds, moving weather, like it all changes so much that like you always get something different, and that keeps me coming back. Eric says, so dreadnoughts, you got me hooked. Damn it, man. Why are they so fun? Told you the dreadnoughts. Okay. Cheers to that. Dreadnoughts, seriously my favorite band right now. Like if you have not heard of the Dreadnoughts, that they're I think they're out of British Columbia, Vancouver, British Columbia. They are like a cross between a little bit of Celtic, a little bit of punk, but a whole lot of polka and sea shanties. What are you going to say to that? It's awesome. It's like, I love the Dreadnoughts. Got to check them out. Ireland. Yes, I love Ireland as well. I love the people of Ireland probably more than the landscape. The landscape's beautiful, but the history and the people are what I love so much about Ireland. Can I mention those two astrophotographs again? Mention those two astrophotographs again. I don't know what you're talking about. Ask me again, Lee. Explain yourself. I don't know what you're talking about. Iceland is amazing. I think you can never see it all. It's agreed. I've still, as many times as I've been to Iceland, I've still never been into the Highlands. Let's see. Have I ever been frustrated that I spent money traveling and you didn't get the photo that you were hoping for? It's hard to spend lots of money when the light just doesn't happen. Yeah, dude, yes, we can all identify with that. There's been plenty of times where I'll go on this wild goose chase for a photo or something or conditions. You know, I've been guilty of, for example, like looking at Skyfire, which is a particular part of the Photographer's Ephemeris app, where it's like a sunset prediction app. And it'll say that the skies are going to be amazing for like 2 days straight, way down on the southern coast. And I will drive 9 hours down to be in that place to try to be ready and try to take advantage of it. Nothing happens. And I don't get anything. And there's been lots of times where I've just chased conditions and came away with nothing. And it makes me feel like a failure. But part of why it makes me feel like a failure is because I'm putting so much pressure on myself to get a good photo, because I'm Nick Page. I have to get a good photo. And not only do I have to try to get a good photo, but I got to try to get a good video too for YouTube, or else people are going to forget about me. And like, you know, that's the downside to being this public figure that a lot of YouTubers are, is that there's that constant pressure to produce. And it's a huge crutch that a lot of us put on ourselves. And I actually look back at the days when I would just go out and do photography and not worry about all of that. I look back at those days longingly, because that was when I was more creative, because I didn't have all that artificial pressure that I was putting on myself. So the most healthy mindset that you can have on any trip is that, you know, it might cost a lot of money. You might not get a good photo, but you're there, you're getting to experience it. And it doesn't matter whether you get a good photo. If you're not getting a good photo, you can composition scout and just get it the next time if the conditions aren't right. and, you know, try to put it into perspective as how lucky are you to get to travel to this place and experience this thing? If you get a good photo, great. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. That's what I try to tell myself. Then I get really pissed off and pout because I do it too. Let's see. Thank you, Kevin, for the kind words. Any plans to come back to the UK after lockdown? Yeah, there's so much of I saw such a small fraction of Scotland. I very much want to go explore Scotland and go way further north than I did. You know, in the UK, Scotland, Ireland, once you go there once, you kind of get your feet wet with it. Oh, thank you, Chris. Christopher just sent me $20 and said, buy a 6-pack on me. Thank you, man. That's very kind. Yeah. So once you go to a place once, it's kind of the icebreaker. So that's how I feel with both Scotland and Ireland right now. Now I want to go back and spend some good, honest time there. There's so much more of Ireland I want to see. I want to spend some time there, some real time there. Same was true with Scotland. I got to see such a small fraction of it. I want to go see more of it. There's a lot down further south that I'd like to see as well. Niece has been to Scotland 5 times and loves it. Yeah, you know, Scotland's another place where I just loved the people. And part of it is, you know, what's the word? You know, it's just cool to listen to the accents. And plus, you know, I have ancestors that are from that area. So I had a great grandmother whose last name was Flanagan, and she married a McCubbins, or she was a McCubbins and she married a Flanagan. So I have a lot of Scottish and Irish and Norwegian in my ancestry. And I'm so interested to go explore the places that my ancestors are from. I want to head to Sedona, Arizona. It's a beautiful area. The part I didn't like about Sedona is that there was just you'd have this big, beautiful mountain and then houses at the base of it, and it kind of spoiled it. But there's just a lot in that area. The whole Flagstaff area is gorgeous. There's a lot there. Let's see. Do I foresee doing a F4 part 2? We'll see if we can get this part 1 out. There's a lot of work that goes into these projects. And yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into these projects. And towards the end of the trip, we weren't in love with each other anymore. The honeymoon was over for sure. Starting to feel that way again towards the end of the editing process, where, you know, we're 4 people that's used to kind of doing our own thing, right? And 4 people that's used to doing our own thing and being our own boss. Let's do this. And when we're all sharing the editing duties, we realize that we're pretty opinionated. And it's coming out a little bit towards the end of this. But having said that, it's getting really close to being done. So I think all of us have our post-processing videos done, which for me, I have 9 videos. Each one's a half hour long. So and then all 4 of us did that. And so we have all of that. And then we've got all the behind the scenes footage done. We've got all the episodes done, just making final little tweaks and corrections. It's all getting very, very close. And we're as excited as you guys to get it out, because it'll mean we're done editing it. We've spent some very long days doing video editing. Adam's in the house. He knows. We're just talking about video editing, Adam. How you feeling? How would you chime in about video editing? Are you done with it yet? Are you tired of it? Because I know I am. Let's see. How long does it usually take to edit one photo? So it depends, but typical, like if it's a photo that I really like and I want to do well, typically it's between 15 on the shortest and 45 on the longest end. Like I try to take my time and edit slow, but Typically, it's between 15 minutes, 45 minutes, I would say. Yes, lots of drama. Grumpy needs a beer. Yep. Let's see. Somebody's mentioning, let's see. David says, looking forward to my live interview with Gary on Sunday. That should be interesting. Gradman versus Luminosity Man. Oh, yeah, I'm sure we're going to see eye to eye. So what David's talking about is Gary Go. How do you say his last name? Go? Gough. Really nice guy. Has a YouTube channel from the UK. I'm going to be on his channel live Sunday. It's going to be Sunday morning where I live. And Adam was just on his channel as well. Let's see. What do we got? Looking for more questions here. Yeah, golf. So when I went to Scotland, I did not take golf clubs and I regretted it. Next time I go, when I went to Ireland, when I got to go, I actually got to play Royal Portrush, which is where they held the Open the following year, which was pretty awesome. Here's a question about Leo photo tripods. So anybody that's familiar with Leo photo tripods, you're going to find that they're very suspiciously similar to Really Right Stuff tripods. The reason for that is they're a knockoff brand that goes out and just copies as close as they can other manufacturers' designs. So they have a whole bunch of Really Right Stuff knockoffs, and they have, maybe it's an Enduro knockoff. They have a couple others out there. I don't like Leo Photo because, first of all, I don't like that business model at all, where they just go and try to piggyback off of other people's designs, but oftentimes they're doing it with lower quality materials and lower quality, like they have to cut a bunch of corners. They're really cheap tripods, but I personally couldn't ever support a company that just goes and rips off other companies. I can't do that. Let's see. It's pronounced golf. Oh, golf plus one. Oh, I see. Gary Golf. You pronounce it with an L though? Gough. Gary Gough. Okay, that makes sense. Their heads are a copy. Their tripod legs are a copy, except their tripod legs, they don't do the ratcheting mechanism that most Really Right Stuff tripods have. They actually have like the pull-out style. And so it doesn't do everything it needs to do. And they don't even like change the name of the tripod. That instead of being like BH55, which is the Really Right Stuff, I think they call them LH55. And it's just such a blatant knockoff. Only it's like a knockoff without the quality. You know, they cut a lot of corners. I don't like that. Let's see. What do you do if a tripod has good legs but bad ball head that won't come off? Will it not come off because it's stuck or because it's like actually a part of the tripod? If that's the case, I don't know. There's not much you can do. But if it's stuck, you'd probably you'd have to look into why it's stuck. I think it's part of the tripod. What tripod do you have there, Ryan? Upgrading soon. Ian says, upgrading soon to full frame. Can't wait for the F4 project. And the Dreadnoughts remind me of Edit Coast Canada pubs. Oh, East Coast Canada pubs. Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of interesting punk music in that area. I love the Dreadnoughts, though. You guys got to check them out. What was my first camera? My first camera was a Canon T3i, Canon Rebel T3i. I got it mostly because I thought I was interested in video. Then I discovered I actually liked photo as well. I found video before I found photo. Let's see. Why not give us a sweet drum beat now and then? Everybody loves a good drum beat. I'm telling you, man, if I had my drums set up, I would do it. It would be very unpopular and it would probably make my channel nosedive, but I would do it for you. I would do it on a live stream, but I don't have it set up. Would I shoot Mars if Elon asked me to? Time delays mean you may not have time to come back. You're damn right I would shoot Mars. Affordable tripod with no center column. I would look, so it depends on the size of tripod you're looking at. So the Colorado Tripod Company, what do they call it? The Centennial tripod, it has a removable center column. If you're looking for one that doesn't even have that, I would probably look at a Feisal 3442. It's their tournament tripod. That one's going to run about that $400 mark. Not a super cheap tripod, but it's very light and a lot of people love it. Why do I not use TK Actions anymore? So Lumenzia is my preferred luminosity mask creation tool. I used to be TK Actions, and before that it was Raya Pro. The reason I moved away from TK Actions is I just felt like, well, first of all, the interface just it was changing really often, which I didn't like. So I would have to relearn the interface every time they updated it. Now it's kind of stabilized a little bit, but it's way slower. And it has just way more going on with it than I personally want or need. I feel like it could be simplified a lot more. Sorry. Beer burps. So it could be simplified a lot more than it is. But another problem is that it does this whole compositing thing where the first luminosity mask you create with it, it takes kind of a snapshot of what your photo looks like. And then you have to remember to delete that composite. They call it a composite before you create future ones. Otherwise, it's not going to be based off what your photo looks like now. It's going to be based off what your photo looked like then. Whoa, I'm going to talk with my hands too much. So, for example, let's say you create your create a lights one, do a bunch of stuff. Maybe you modify something, like let's say you do a free transform or warp a mountain or whatever it is. Something moves in your image. When you go to create that next luminosity mask, your luminosity mask is not going to line up with how your photo looks like now. You have to remember to delete your channels and recreate a composite. Or at least that's the way it was the last time I used it. I think I might be one version behind right now because I just haven't been testing every single version that comes out. But what I like about Lumenzia is it's faster. It creates the masks faster, and it's always based off how your photo looks now rather than what it looked like when you created your composite, whenever that was. So I just like that it's simpler and faster, and I don't have to think about it as much. Yeah, Lumenzia is very intuitive. And what I like about what he does is he's taken that same interface and he keeps adding stuff to it, but it never changes the way it looks. It's still set up the way it's always been set up. So you never have to relearn it. There's just new hidden things that, like, if you take the time to learn them, like if I hold down Control when I click this, it does something new. It does a lot of stuff that you don't even realize that it does. And if you take the time to learn that stuff, it's really powerful. But you don't have to take the time to learn that stuff, and they don't change the layout of it. Do I ever use ON1? So yeah, I've tried. I've been messing around with ON1, and it's like somewhere between Lightroom and Photoshop. Like it does more than Lightroom will as far as like some of the capabilities, but it doesn't do as much or do it as well as Photoshop. So I can't really use it yet. Who's a famous photographer that I can't stand? Ooh, you're trying to get me in trouble, man. So I've gotten myself in trouble by being too vocal in the past, and I'm trying to learn from my mistakes, Shan Dobby. So I'm not gonna let you bait me into that. There are famous photographers that I don't care for, but I'm not gonna say nothing. Let's see. Damn, just got TK7. Well, yeah, I mean, it's still a good plugin. Like it's more about what you're used to, right? They all do the same things. It's just a matter of like, once you learn a certain way, then once you switch up what buttons are what and relearn all the icons, once you learn that, that's going to become the fastest thing for you. It just so happens that I feel like the Lumenzia layout is a little bit more intuitive. Affinity Photo. Man, a lot of people talk about Infinity Photo, and I haven't taken the time to learn it. I'll look into it someday. Love my content. Thank you, Andrew. In the lightning video, there were magnetic filters. Were those magnetic filters from Breakthrough Photography really interested in that system? No. So I've got them here. I talked about them a little bit ago. But so this is the filters that I was using. These are made by Case with a K. And so you just take this filter ring, right? This is 24 to 105. And you can see how thin this little ring is. That's what I like about these filters so much, is they're very light. They must be some kind of aluminum. And not only can you, oh, is that the circular? Yeah, it's circular polarizer. And then you just pop them on. They're very light. And yeah, they take up very little space in the bag. I've ran into really no issues. Like, I ran into a tiny bit of vignetting with my 16 to 35. You can stack them as well. So this is the circular polarizer, I think. Yeah. Circular polarizer. Here's a 6-stop ND. And you can stack them together and still run into very little vignetting. So liking them. I don't know that they're going to be like my main filters yet. I'm just testing them. I'm going to give them away. Yeah. So, hey, Nick, why no printing? I do print. I don't print my own stuff. Like, I don't have a big printer in the back where I'll hold up prints for you guys. And the reason I don't do that is printers are expensive. And when I do print, I like to print big because I'm an all or nothing person, right? So I'm either doing ultra wide photos, super telephotos, and if I print them massive. So I typically, when I sell a print, I don't do anything smaller than, like, I don't know, 40 by 60, stuff like that. I like to print really large if I'm going to print at all, partially because I don't have tons of time to dedicate towards print orders and all of that. So I filter all of that out by making sure that my prints are so expensive that nobody buys them. Let's see. Let's see. I was looking at those as well. Is there much color cast? I haven't noticed too much of a color cast. Circular polarizer has one. A lot of times you'll get that kind of bluish green color cast from a circular polarizer. I am noticing some color cast, but not tons with the ND filters. Let's see. Let's see. Spicing up the chat a little bit, Gavin Hardcastle says that he only sleeps watching Adams Gibbs videos. Do I do the same when insomnia hits you? I'm a big supporter of Adam. Don't be mad at me. No, I appreciate Adam's videos. Like, Adam. So I've said this before. I feel like Adam is probably one of the best photographers on YouTube. Like, there's a lot of photographers. Here we go. Let me take a drink. That beer is getting really warm. Gross. There's a lot of photographers on YouTube that aren't great. There's a lot of not great photographers on YouTube. And there's a lot of photographers that are amazing storytellers, pretty average photographers. Adam is one of the best photographers on YouTube. And I know that he doesn't, sometimes the videos that he puts out, he doesn't get those killer shots always during the video, but he's one of the photographers I really look up to and respect on YouTube. Him, Michael Shainblum. That might be it. Those guys are two of my favorite photographers that also happen to be YouTubers. There's a lot of YouTubers that should be attending workshops rather than leading them. Just going to say that. I probably said too much. I shouldn't ever drink and do these things. Let's see. Also, beer's supposed to be warm. No, only if it's dark enough. You're not supposed to drink warm, like, red beer. That's pretty freaking gross. Getting drunk. No, can't get drunk off this much beer. But maybe I've just been talking too long. Too long straight. Let's see. Paul Adam has, yeah. Paul Adam is a seriously good drone pilot. I must have a lot of moolah. No, not really. How long does it take for me to process an image, including processing time? I think I mentioned this earlier, about somewhere between 45 minutes on the longest end. Like edit never takes me longer than that much because I can't spend that much time on an edit. I'm a really fast editor, so I can do a lot of crap to a photo in 45 minutes. So more typically, it's like 15 minutes. And then on the very most difficult images, I'll spend 45 minutes. Let's see. How long? Let's see. I agree. Adam is a beast. Learned a lot from him. Yes, you are. When did I realize I was good enough to give workshops? So I was teaching workshops before I should have been. So my very first workshop that I ever taught at, I was co-leading a workshop for Jim Harmer, who used to run Improved Photography. He was leading a workshop to Iceland, and he asked me to be a co-leader, and that was 2016. And honestly, that was my first gig, and I'm glad I was not the main leader. And it didn't go great. It was not a good experience. It was a great lesson on how not to lead a workshop. I led another one with those guys to China. That was that same year. That was later in the year. And then after all of that, the following year, I got up the courage to, well, maybe it wasn't the following year. Maybe it was the same year. I led one in my local area of the Palouse, and because it's where I grew up in. And at that point, I felt like I was a good photographer, but I knew the area really well. I had tons of local knowledge. So my local knowledge made up for the lack in photographic abilities. I've always been pretty harsh on myself as far as my own abilities go. I'm not a overconfident person. My glass is always half empty. So, maybe I was better than I give myself credit for, especially when I look at some of the other people. I've always been knowledgeable about post-processing, but I've never been super excited about my photography. And I'm still not super excited about my photography. I'm not as good as what I want to be. I'm really critical about photography. There's a lot of photography I don't like out there, but I don't even like my own photography. So, I can't nobody can make me happy. I can't even make me happy. Guess that's what I'm trying to say. At that point, I had been doing photography for only 3 years when I led my first workshop. And then it was definitely too early, but by getting thrown into the fire a little bit too early, trial by fire, it made me get better really fast, and it made me focus on, what I needed to do to be a better leader and a better teacher. Because I don't like being, I want to have a clean conscience when I do things. I don't want to do things to get rich. I want to do things to actually help people rather than, make money. Let's see. I'm a pretty upbeat guy. I am so upbeat. Not really. Do I think I'll shoot Greenland this year in September? I really hope so. I'm very hopeful that things will be back to normal enough to get to go to Greenland this year. Have I ever thought about going to upstate New York? Yeah, I've definitely thought about it, but I don't have plans to. What would I say is the best way to get back inspiration? I haven't touched my gear in 6 months and you're stuck. I think the biggest thing is to just allow yourself to have that break. I think a break is always a good thing because burnout is rough. And I experience it pretty often because I don't allow myself to have that break because, I have that pressure to always be producing something. And I have the problem of my sense of self-worth is wrapped up on how much I'm producing. If I'm not producing a video or a photo or something, I'm obviously not worth anything because I haven't produced anything. so my sense of self-worth is wrapped up into it. But I think that when I have the biggest sense of inspiration and I feel motivated to get out, it's when I've allowed myself to have the break and I've taken the pressure off myself to produce when I do go out. So just going out with zero intention of doing anything that's good, it's such a liberating thing that it becomes fun again. And then once you're having fun again, then photography becomes easy again and everything starts to be motivational again. Just take that pressure off yourself. Focus stacking. What is my process of doing it well? I struggle with getting it done. So the first thing is you got to make sure that you're getting the images you need. A lot of times just make sure you're shooting in a manual exposure mode. I like to start focusing close to camera. I don't bother with like manually focusing. I just use autofocus most of the time. People severely underestimate how good their autofocus system is generally. Make sure you're doing enough images. If you're really close to something, you're this far away, you need to get a bunch of frames, and you need more frames close to camera than you do far away. So if you're shooting 16 millimeters this far away from a foreground, you're probably going to want 4 or 5 images, in this rock or whatever it is. And then you'll need 1 or 2 out towards the horizon, like one on the horizon, one somewhere between the horizon and your rock or whatever. So make sure you get the images that you need, and then take all those images, open them up in Photoshop, edit, auto align them. Once you align them all, I like to throw them into a folder and then duplicate that folder. The reason you want to do that is because Photoshop screws it up fairly often. So if it does screw it up, you have an untouched set of perfectly aligned images that you can draw back from and fix whatever's broken. And then take that second group, auto blend them, cross your fingers. Hopefully Photoshop did a good job. If they didn't do a good job, you go back to those source files and you just blend in where your artifacts are. Let's see. Mike Spivey, 2015 Palouse. Yep. So Mike Spivey here in the chat room, he was on my very first solo workshop. And like I joke about pretty often, I only lost half the group. That's not bad. It was rough. I thought that was 2016, but that was 2015. So I was leading my first workshops in 2015, which means that I had only been doing photography for 2.5 years at that point, something like that. Nick Page, can you explain how I back up my photos on my home NAS system? So what I do is photos that I'm working on at the moment, I have internally on my hard drives. I have a fast drive, which stuff is just on there for the day. And then I have my large spinning drive. That large spinning drive, I back up, I don't know, probably only once every 3 weeks or something, but I back up to just an external drive. And then everything else, once I'm done editing those raw files, I send those to my NAS system. The NAS system is working with a RAID setup to where it's automatically kind of cross backing up stuff to where, if one drive goes bad, I haven't lost anything. I just replaced the drive and I've still got all my information. I don't do any kind of cloud backup, but I really should. The main reason that I don't is simply because I've got so much data. I would have to have them send me a hard drive, fill the hard drive, send it back, and I don't feel like doing that. Great video chat tonight. Thanks, Nick. Thank you. You started following me all the way back on the Improved Photography days. That's been a while. I just saw that Improved Photography, they sold the whole brand, and like they're rebranding it and stuff now, which is really strange to see. Let's see. Question: Do I know a good place, Nick, to learn more about blending and focus stacking, or somewhere that I could point me to check out on YouTube? So I know I demonstrated it once. I think if you go to my channel and go to things you can't do in Lightroom, or Lightroom versus Photoshop, I think that's the one. I demonstrate easily how to focus stack. I also talk about exposure blending there. that's some of the free stuff that you can do. Obviously, insert shameless plug here. My Essential Photoshop course teaches all of that stuff plus everything else. Do you need let's see. Do I have a video of my computer system and backups? Not of my backups, but when I built my computer, I made a video about that. If you just do a search for Nick Page computer, you'll find that. I built it. I had a company build it. There's a company called Puget Systems, which builds multimedia machines for all kinds of people. And I had them build it because I wanted somebody to call if something went wrong. Who's a better photographer, Nick Page or Kevin Hardcastle? We all know the answer to that, right? Just go look at our websites. Thanks for answering questions, Nick, and for critiquing my Misty Forest image. That was a good one. Good night. It's 4 a.m. in the UK. I don't blame you. Let's see. When am I doing a part 2 why you shoot landscape photography video? I need to do more stuff like that. I really enjoy the videos that are not just a talking head. You know, I'm so tired of seeing my face rambling about crap. It's part of why I did the Stormlight video. It's because I'm tired of looking at myself, especially when I edit. I get really tired of it. So I enjoy the more voiceover kind of things. Plus it's an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the photography I've done in the past, because I start feeling like I have this massive portfolio now that, you know, my website is the most bloated portfolio you've ever seen. It'd be nice to have something to do with some of those images. I feel like they just sit there and collect dust. So it's kind of nice to do some of those voiceover videos. Let's see. Does Nick Page have any non-British friends? I do. I probably fit in better with my non-British friends. Let's see. Thoughts on possible A7S III? I'm interested. I'm skeptical whether it's ever going to come out. I think everybody's waiting for it, but it's not actually ever going to come out. I got to tell you though, that Canon R5, if it actually comes out with the specs that it looks like it's coming out, I could foresee myself being a Canon shooter again. Canon was a good time. I miss some things about Canon. It'd be kind of cool to switch back to Canon. Be painfully expensive, get rid of all my lenses and stuff, but I could see myself. Got Josh Corrigan in the house. How's it going? Good to hear you too. Well, good to kind of hear you. I can't really hear you, but it's good to see you in here, man. Joined late, says Lawrence. Like taking Astro landscapes with a D750, thinking about changing to Sony or Z6. Any thoughts? Well, you'd get to keep all your lenses if you went with the Z6. I think right now, I keep saying it. I feel like I say it a lot. Right now is not a good time to buy a new camera. I feel like you should wait and see, because I think Nikon, assuming that COVID-19 doesn't destroy any releases, I think they're on the verge of releasing some new stuff this year. So I would wait and see what their successors are going to be, because they'll probably be way better than the Z6 or the Z7. How often do I sell prints? Do I think there's much of a market out there? I think there is a market, but you got to be really clever and marketing minded in order to tap into it. I know plenty of people that make pretty much their entire living off selling prints. Me personally, I don't. There was a time when I sold a lot more than I do now, just because I used to try to. But the overhead was so big, you know, so great, because I would have to like fill a little gallery with stuff. I think there will be a time where I pursue it again, but for right now, it's just too much work. Love my Canons, waiting for the new 1DX Mark III to arrive. It's going to be a sweet camera. Am I considering any workshops in or around the Four Corners? Not anytime soon. Just because when I teach workshops in areas, I want to have some local knowledge or team up with someone that does. I don't know anybody in the Four Corners really. Since I'm from Washington, have I ever been to Dry Falls? Oh yeah, been to the Dry Falls area quite a bit. Never made any good photos there, but it's a really impressive place, especially in the wintertime. I like it then. Let's see. So Zach says, I have this crazy idea of focus stacking and exposure blending a panorama. Have I ever done that? Yeah, I had to do that once, and it was so much work, I'll never do it again. So the day before I went to Mesa Arch for the first time, this was a long time ago, back when I actually did go to Mesa Arch, I destroyed my wide angle lens the day before going there. And so I had this high dynamic range scene, a wide scene, and I only had a 28 millimeter lens, and I was really close to the rocks, so I needed to focus stack. So I shot a focus stacked exposure blended panorama. I don't even remember how I stitched it all together, but it was way more work than it was worth. It was a lot of work. Let's see. Have I ever sold pictures at art shows or pop-up markets? No, I've never set up like any kind of booth like that. I'm not sure that that's the way I would want to do it. I have had a thought of like teaming up with a couple other photographers and setting up an actual retail space in a very tourist minded town, and just paying somebody to run the shop. And because you're teamed up with multiple photographers, you're splitting the cost of the shop up several ways. I think that might be a good use of my portfolio at some point. Nick, one tripod, TV 14 or TVC? Oh man, that's the really right stuff. Small one. Man, I don't know. I like the Versa tops. The not the really small ones, but the slightly larger ones. TVC 14. I want to say that's the larger one with the Versa top. Do I have plans to go back to Phoenix, Arizona? So I've been hoping that that things will settle down enough for me to go storm chasing, go down during these thunderstorms that are rolling in. There's a chance that I might be just taking off and heading down to that kind of Arizona, New Mexico area to chase some storms. Favorite drone? Man, I have a Phantom 4 Pro and a Mavic Air. I use the Mavic Air way more often just because it's small and compact and I have it. The Phantom 4 Pro is just ridiculous and I never take it anywhere. It's too big. I've thought about getting, when the Mavic 2s came out, I really wanted to get those. But the problem is drones, like everywhere that's cool enough to want to fly there, you can't. And people get so mad at you for flying. It's just like, it's almost not worth it. Let's see. I should come visit Scandinavia and do some landscape in the fjords of Norway. I totally agree. There's so much in Scandinavia that I want to see. I'm really drawn to so much of Norway. I really want to get there. Nick, please look into coming to South Carolina. I would love to. Ever wondered why do I tag Mesa Arch in every photo I post? So I went on a rant earlier in this video about that. Essentially, it's my way of bringing up of talking about it's hard to just sit here and ramble for this long. I'm starting to lose my train of thought. The reason I tag Mesa Arch and everything is because it's my way of protesting geotagging on social media. Mesa Arch is a great example of how locations end up when they've been shared to death on social media. I have a much better explanation of this towards the beginning of this video, so you might tune into the replay. A7R4 or A9, very different cameras. The A9 is great for sports and wildlife and video. A7R4 is great for dynamic range and resolution. The high ISO performance of the R4 leaves something to be desired, but the A9 is great for a lot of stuff. Let's see. Longest distance I've driven for a short road. Well, for a short photography trip, it's nothing for me to just take off like 8 to 10 hours down to the coast. I'm pretty notorious for just like, if I see the conditions are good on the coast, I just go. I hop in the car and I drive all the way there and shoot sunrise the next morning. So it's nothing for me to go all the way there. Canada is late to the party again. Let's see. Nick, have I been to San Juan, Colorado? No, I have not been to the San Juans in Colorado. Am I going to come back to Mordor? Dude, I live in Mordor, man. Every day's Mordor when you're Nick Page and you like dark photos. Would I recommend buying the Chevy ZR2? Yes, I'm very much loving my ZR2. I've got the gas version and I'm very happy with it. Still rocking the A6000. Is a used A7R2 good enough for a jump into full frame? Depends on what you're shooting. The A7R2 has a great sensor, really poor ergonomics and focusing system. So if you're going to manually focus everything, A7R2 is fine. Just buy some extra batteries. But the A7R3, there's not a huge image quality jump there. But there's a massive ergonomics, battery life, and focusing system and video system jump. So if any of that stuff's important to you, A7R3 is worth it. Thank you. Let's see. San Juans are gorgeous. Anytime I'm coming to Australia or New Zealand, I definitely want to. Like, Australia, New Zealand are definitely on the list, as is Tasmania. Beard game is strong. Yeah, I brushed it today. Sometimes I wash it. Let's see. Can we talk luminosity masks in Premiere Pro for a second? Or talk luminosity in Premiere Pro for a second? I don't think anybody would be very interested in talking about that. Okay. I think I'm done. An hour and 41 minutes of rambling is about as much as I can take. I drank half a beer. The second half is so incredibly warm and gross. I think that this pretty much signals the end of our chat. I guess I could down it for you guys, but I think I'm done talking. Hopefully you guys are all safe and enjoyed my rambling. It's starting to get fairly incoherent towards the end because it's just very difficult to talk for that long with no holy cow, $50. Thank you, man. Thank you, Grumpy Santa. Holy cow, that's very, very kind. Okay, well, I'm going to chug my beer and then we'll call this a night. If you guys all have beers, chug it with me. Here we go. Cheers, you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll catch you next time.